What's good, YouTube? Sensational Srs here, and I'm back with another Tom Clancy's The Division Vendor Reset video. We're here for a June 12th, 2020's vendor reset. So let's get right into this to see what we got good for this week. Okay, so for our first gear items, you want to head over to the base operations. Here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 7% ballistic shield health. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the advanced weaponry vendor, and here we got a military G36 with a gear score of 263. It has 21% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is Fierce, Prepared, and Focused. Also here we got a Marine Super 90 with a gear score of 278. It has 348% stagger, and the talents it has is Meticulous, Brutal, and Competent. Also here we got a Srs A1 with a gear score of 266. It has 171% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Deadly, Disciplined, and Cool-Headed. Also here we got an extended magazine with 115.50% magazine size, 4% crit hit damage, and 4.90% rate of fire. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special equipment vendor, and here we got a Pecan. If you like to run this weapon, it has a gear score of 262. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is Deadly, Prepared, and Pecan. Also here we got a Historian with a gear score of 269. It has 164% headshot damage, and the talents this has is Deadly, Sustained, and Historian Repeats. Also here we got a Liberator with a gear score of 267. It has 18% enemy armor damage, and the talents this has is Brutal, Prepared, and Deadly. Also here we got a converted SMG9. If you're a fan for this weapon, it has a gear score of 272. It has 19.50% crit hit chance, and the talents this has is Destructive, Vicious, and Fierce. Also here we got a custom M870 MCS with a gear score of 283. It has 339% stagger, and the talents this has is Brutal, Accurate, and Competent. Also here we got a classic M1A with a gear score of 270. It has 142% headshot damage, and the talents this has is Prepared, Disciplined, and Ferocious. Also here we got a tactical mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 266. The armor is 869. Its roll for electronics 1168. And the attributes this has is exotic damage resilience and increased kill XP. Also here we got a prototype electronics mod with 265 electronics and 3% skill haste. Also here we got a prototype performance mod with 4% seeker mine damage. Also here we got a heavy magazine spring with 12% magazine size, 5% reload speed, and 10.90% rate of fire. Also here we got a large suppressor FDE with 17% crit hit damage, 4.50% optimal range, and 2.50% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got a snub nose rhino blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a holster blueprint here with a gear score of 256. We also got a vertical grip foliage green blueprint with a power level 34. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the cavern. Here the gear vendor has a Gunslingers Vest with the talent Vigorous on there. It has a gear score of 266. The armor is 1,820. Its roll for firearms 1,138. And the attributes this has is health on kill, health, and increased kill XP. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 7% turret duration. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Kerman Station. Here the weapons vendor has an M700 carbine with a gear score of 279. It has 172% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Brutal, Accurate, and Elevated. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Cam Clinton. Here the special equipment vendor has a Pecan. If you like to run this weapon, it has a gear score of 265. It has 22% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is Determined, Competent, and Pecan. Also here we got a Historian with a gear score of 272. It has 162% headshot damage, and the talents this has is Vicious, Toxic, and Historian Repeats. Also here we got a tactical ACR with a gear score of 280. It has 23% enemy armor damage, and the talents this has is Vicious, Competent, and Commanding. Also here we got a hunting M44 with a gear score of 271. It has 148% headshot damage, and the talents this has is Unforgiven, Trained, and Disciplined. Also here we got an operator pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 275. The armor is 1,306. Its roll for electronics 1,224. And the attributes this has is skill power and ammo capacity. Also here we got a prototype electronics mod with 254 electronics and 1% crit hit chance. Also here we got an extended magazine with 114% magazine size, 4.50% reload speed, and 4.90% rate of fire. For our next gear items, we're still at Camp Clinton. Head over to the Special Blueprints vendor, and here we got a first wave PF45 blueprint with a gear score of 256. Also here we got a surplus Svd blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a firearms mask blueprint with a gear score of 256. Also here we got a compensator blueprint with a power level 34. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Dante's Run. Here the gear vendor has a prototype stamina mod with 253 stamina and 2.50% exotic damage resilience. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Wolves Den. Here the weapons vendor has a G36C with a gear score of 270. It has 23% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is ferocious, determined, and focused. And then also here we got an SR7 suppressor with 17% crit hit damage, 2% accuracy, and 2.50% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Autumn's Hope. Here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 5% first aid ally heal. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the last call. Here the weapons vendor has a police MK17 with a gear score of 275. It has 151% headshot damage, and the talents it has is competent, determined, and adept. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Southpaw. Here the gear vendor has a tactical pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 270. The armor is 1,227. Its roll for stamina 1,223, and the attributes it has is health and burn resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Grindhouse. Here the weapons vendor has a Paratrooper Svd with a gear score of 282. It has 170% headshot damage, and the talents it has is Unforgiven, Determined, and Discipline. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Firewall. Here the gear vendor has a tactical pack with the talent Specialized on there. It has a gear score of 277. The armor is 1,258. Its roll for firearms 1,271, and the attributes it has is crit hit damage and burn resistance. And also here we got a prototype firearms mod with 267 firearms and 3,280 skill power. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Crypt. Here the weapons vendor has a converted USC with a gear score of 273. It has 19% crit hit chance, and the talents it has is competent, commanding, and ambusher. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 31st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a custom L86A2 with a gear score of 275. It has 22% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents it has is adept, determined, and ferocious. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 34th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a converted USC with a gear score of 276. It has 20.50% crit hit chance, and the talents this one has is Unforgiven, Hurried, and Ambusher. Also here we got a tactical vest with the talent Vigorous on there. It has a gear score of 272. The armor is 1,934. Its roll for stamina 1,157, and the attributes this has is health, exotic damage resilience, and ammo capacity. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 2% post crit hit chance. For our next gear items, you want to head to West 39th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a military RPK 74M with a gear score of 260. It has 20% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is Deadly, Commanding, and Prepared. Also here we got an operator vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 280. The armor is 1,948. Its roll for firearms 1,225, and the attributes this has is health on kill, skill haste, and increased kill XP. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 3.50% ballistic shield damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 42nd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a small grip with 18% crit hit damage, 4.50% optimal range, and 4.50% reload speed. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to West 46th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical ACR with a gear score of 272. It has 19% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is ferocious, competent, and fierce. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 3.50% mobile cover damage resilience. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to West 53rd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Vector 45 ACP with a gear score of 265. It has 21% crit hit chance, and the talents it has is ferocious, commanding, and fierce. And also here we got a prototype stamina mod with 254 stamina and 3,206 skill power. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 61st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has a heavy magazine spring with 4% crit hit damage, 2.50% crit hit chance, and 9.80% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 58th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has the operator pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 265. The armor is 1,165. Its roll for stamina 1,194. And the attributes this has is health and burn resistance. And also here we got some operator gloves with the talent Savage on there. They have a gear score of 274. The armor is 972. Its roll for stamina 1209. And the attributes this has is crit hit chance, assault rifle damage, and skill haste. For our next gear items, you went over to the Park Ave checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone weapons vendor has an MG5 with a gear score of 277. It has 18% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is Swift, Unforgiving, and Competent. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 53rd Street checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a custom P416G3 with a gear score of 259. It has 19% enemy armor damage, and the talents this has is Ferocious, Unforgiving, and Brutal. Also here we got an Operator Mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 268. The armor is 913. Its roll for firearms 1204. And the attributes this has is health on kill and increased kill XP. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 3.50% mobile cover damage resilience. For our next gear items, you would head over to East 46th Street checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype performance mod with 3.50% Seeker Mine damage. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to East 42nd Street checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has a large suppressor FDE with 19% crit hit damage, 2.50% crit hit chance, and 2.50% stability. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to East 34th Street checkpoint. Here, the Dark Zone vendor has an Operator Vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 277. The armor is 1984. Its roll for stamina 1218, and the attributes this has is exotic damage resilience, all resistance, and increased kill XP. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 4.50% support station healing speed. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to East 31st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical AUG A3P with a gear score of 276. It has 19.50% crit hit chance, and the talents this has is Competent, Adept, and Destructive. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 5% first aid self-heal. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to the 5th Ave checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Spec Ops Armor with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 1928. Its roll for stamina 1129. And the attributes this has is health, exotic damage resilience, and increased kill XP. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ2 safe room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a Spec Ops Mask with the talent Refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 267. The armor is 890. Its roll for stamina 1215. And the attributes this has is exotic damage resilience and damage to elites. Also here we got a tactical vest with the talent Rapid on there. It has a gear score of 262. The armor is 1705. Its roll for firearms 1137. And the attributes this has is enemy armor damage, health, and ammo capacity. Also here we got an Operator Pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 265. The armor is 1140. Its roll for stamina 1213. And the attributes this has is crit damage and ammo capacity. For our next gear items, you want to head over to DZ3 safe room. Here the Dark Zone weapons vendor has a military SA58. If you like to run this weapon, it has a gear score of 268. It has 19% enemy armor damage. And the talents this has is Self-Preserved, Ferocious, and Vicious. And also here we got a custom L86A2 with a gear score of 258. It has 18% damage to targets out of cover. And the talents this has is Commanding, Prepared, and Competent. For our next gear items, you'll head over to DZ8 safe room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has an Operator Mask with the talent Refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 277. The armor is 992. Its roll for stamina 1152. And the attributes this has is all resistance and blind death resistance. Also here we got a tactical vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 267. The armor is 1775. Its roll for electronics 1149. And the attributes this has is exotic damage resilience, enemy armor damage, and increased kill XP. Also here we got some Operator gloves with the talent Savage on there. They have a gear score of 265. The armor is 854. Its roll for stamina 1187. And the attributes this has is pistol damage, enemy armor damage, and SMG damage. For our next gear items, you would head over to DZ9 safe room. Here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has a heavy magazine spring with 2.50% crit hit chance, 4.50% reload speed, and 9.80% rate of fire. And then also here we got a 5.52 hollow sight with 7% crit hit chance, 5.50% headshot damage, and 4.50% optimal range. Alright everybody, that's it for our Tom Clancy's The Division Vendor Reset video for June 12, 2020's Vendor Reset. I hope everybody who tuned into it found something that they needed. Smash on that like button and that sub button. I appreciate that support, y'all. Check me out on Twitch sometimes. I stream on there. And y'all can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I appreciate that support. And I will see y'all with the next one, everybody. Take care. Peace.